Good evening, everyone. Welcome to meeting number 8 tonight. I am your chair of Administration, Finance, and Fire, Jason Trombetta. Prior to commencing the Administration, Finance, and Fire Committee meeting agenda, please note comments be made to the public for the matter on the agenda, please by advising the chair during requests to address items on the agenda. The public may submit written comments for the matters that are on the agenda to jpaylove@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting for consideration by committee. Comments received after 4:30 on the day of the committee meeting will be considered at the following council meeting. Comments submitted are included for the record, and this meeting will be live streamed as well as recorded and available on the township website. Just before getting started, to let everybody know, Councillor Chichuk is in attendance. She is on Zoom. So everyone that's viewing this at the moment will note that. So we'll move on to our land acknowledgement statement. The Township of West Lincoln, being a part of the Niagara region, is situated on treaty land. The land is steeped in rich history, such as the First Nations, such as the Hattaway-Wendoronk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nation, Métis, and Inuit from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara region today. The Township of West Lincoln, as a part of the regional municipality of Niagara, stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wise stewardships of the land on which we live. Members of committee, is there any changes in order of items on the agenda? Seeing none, again, members of committee, any disclosure of pecuniary interest or conflict of interest? Seeing none. Request items on the agenda. Note that, is there anybody in cyberspace?
Not seeing anyone, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Kevin. Consent agenda items, there are none. We have straight down to communications. Item A, 5424, Mayor Youth Advisory Committee minutes on October 2nd, 2024. The recommendation that the Mayor's Youth Advisory Committee minutes dated October 2nd, 2024 be received. Members of the committee, I need a mover and a seconder for this. Councillor Riley, seconded by Councillor Bradrick. Comments or questions? Seeing none, and the vote will be in front of you, members of the committee. If it's working. There we go. Thank you, members of the committee. Moving on to staff reports. Carries. Item A, 5524, Manager in Finance, Deputy Treasurer Caitlin Rapaz, and Director of Finance, Treasurer Donald D. Philippus. The recommendation report T2424, 2024 Asset Management Plan Phase 3 Budget Amendment. The recommendation that report T24 2024 titled Asset Management Plan Phase 3 Budget Amendment dated November 18th, 2024 be received, and that a budget amendment amount of BA 2024-12 for the amount of $60,000 funded through the capital reserve be approved by council. Members of the committee, I need a mover and seconder for this. Madam Mayor, seconded. Councillor Rayner, comments or questions on this budget amendment? Sir, Councillor Rayner.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through to the Director of Finance. Part 2 says budget amendment of $60,000 funded through capital reserve. We've once in a while get into situations where we need money, and we always have a reserve that seems to be there when we need it. How many reserves do we have?
Of reserves, I don't have the exact number, but I think we have about 15 different reserves. Each of those reserves, through the township's reserve policy, have specific meanings, and they are used for certain kinds of things, which is specified in that policy. The capital reserve for the township would be eligible for use in this work.
Councillor.
Through you, Mr. Chair. And how much is in the capital reserve?
Through Councillor Trombetta to Councillor Rayner, the amount in the capital reserve currently, okay, I'm going to pass that question off to the director for the exact number. I believe she has that information available.
Yeah, through you, Chair Trombetta to Councillor Rayner. Actually, if you look at the second report, the third quarter update, Schedule C, it gives council a snapshot of all our reserves projected to the end of December. So if you look at that, the capital reserve, we have an uncommitted expected balance of just over $1 million. So that's on page 17 of the PDF.
Your microphone, Counselor.
Thank you. It's just, Mr. Chair, that we're coming up to budget time, and we're always looking for money. And I know we have the reserves, because when we get into a situation that we need something quickly, we've got something to go for, and I understand why. I think household budgets are the same. You always have a little bit of something in the back corner on a rainy day that you need when you want. But it's just coming up to budget time, and this one could be a rather tough one coming up because of a number of situations we've been forewarned about, that the 2025 one could be very difficult, that it's nice to know what we may have extra that may soften the blow, and that's why I brought it up. So thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Counselor Chichuk?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to ask a question through you to the Director of Finance, if I could, and that is, the capital reserve is there for replacement of all of the infrastructure that we have out in play right now. It's not like it's sitting there and it doesn't have things attributed to it or waiting for repair. If repairs are necessary, it comes out of that reserve. Am I correct?
Director?
Through Chair Trombetta to Councillor Chichok. So the capital reserve is used for infrastructure projects as well as special projects. I'm just looking at Appendix C. The closing balance in the reserve is about 2.8 million, but then we take from it all the commitments. So when we say commitments, that means funds that have already been encumbered through that reserve from previous budgets. So that leaves an uncommitted balance of 1.1 million in that reserve.
Any follow-up, Counselor?
It's just that I don't want it to be sounded like we can take money from that reserve willy-nilly if in future, as our requirements for capital each year, that reserve is where we go to get the balance to put extra works in place. Am I correct, through you, Mr. Chair, to the Director?
Yep, go ahead, Donna.
Through you, Chairman Trombetta, to Councillor Chichok. So that reserve is typically used for capital projects that don't have their own specific reserves. So it would not be used for water and wastewater. It would be used for road infrastructure and special projects. And if you look at the 10-year capital plan, we plan on using that reserve. We contribute to it every year. So it is used for infrastructure and special projects.
I guess, Mr. Chair, what I was trying to get at is we saw the next 10 or 15 years of capital works, and we saw ourselves in a deficit position unless we put taxes up substantially. So what I was trying to say was that reserve is always there, and it's there to be used for projects that need funding as we incur new capital projects. I was just saying that it's not sitting there to be used for reducing taxes or anything of that nature. That was the question I guess I should have put forward. I apologize. And through you, Mr. Chair, I put that to the Director.
Through you, Chairman Trombetta, to Councillor Chichok, that reserve would never be used to reduce taxes. If anything, that reserve, we always request a larger transfer to it, which actually increases taxes.
Thank you. That was my point. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'll put myself on mute.
Yeah. Thank you, Counselor Chichuk. Counselor Riley?
Is that all right with you? Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wanted to, don't really have a question. I could just see those at home or those in the gallery who might not be familiar with the budget. And the numbers sound really big, but I think it's important to note, even just for the record there, that that our reserves, as much as 1.1 million uncommitted sounds like a lot of money, it certainly isn't. These are kind of expenses that aren't rollover expenses year after year. They kind of catch the in-between. It's a safety net. And in our community, as we are facing a very, more difficult times as budget comes forward, this is what prevents us having to, or not prevents, but what saves us from having to go back to the tax base to throw money on when we have to, we have let's say a public works truck that comes a little bit over budget and unanticipated just because of inflation and everything else. Instead of having to run back to the tax base and say, hey, listen, we need $50,000, we have these reserves to kind of save us there. And that is an important message, just so members of the community or the media, whoever's reading and writing this, that they actually understand how this works. Because again, I think it's very easy for this to be very confusing, and it looks like we have more money than we do, because we can't run efficiently if we have no reserves. So anyways, I just want to make that very clear, as clear as I can.
Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rayner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. There's a couple items. One that Councillor Riley just brought up with regards to a fire truck. If we need a little bit extra, we'd have to go to the tax base. But the Director of Finance said it's not used to reduce taxes. But if that difference is used to pay that off instead of going to the taxpayers, which is what you said, then it is used to reduce the taxes because of the fact that we won't have to go to the taxpayer by using the reserve for the difference that we didn't account for. So I think it does in a way, but my interpretation of this was it's capital reserve, and capital is different than regular expenses that you use in the operations of your business, which the corporation is. So if we need a road and we needed extra money and the budget comes up for a capital, let's say we want to do a section of road, through you, Mr. Chair, to the Director, then wouldn't that capital reserve be used for that purpose?
Through Chairman Trombetta to Councillor Rayner, the capital reserve is used to fund special projects and infrastructure. And in terms of infrastructure, it's typically roads, because we do not have a specific reserve for roads. We have a specific reserve for water, wastewater, bridges, equipment. We do not have one for roads. So if you look at the 10-year capital plan, this reserve is used for special projects, and it's also used for infrastructure. In this case, this request is to fund a special project. In completing phase 2 of the asset management plan, and looking forward to phase 3, staff is well aware that we don't have the internal capacity to complete this project. So we're asking for a budget amendment. Typically, this would have been asked during the budget process, but unfortunately, when we are putting together the 2024 budget, we did not think that we would need an outside source to do this project. If council does not approve this project, I just want to outline some of the risk. We would not meet the deadline that the province has mandated for this. It may take us a year or 2 years to complete it. So it's the will of council whether or not they want to approve this. If it's not approved, then we just wouldn't be able to do the work in time to meet the deadline. And as it's outlined in the report, there is a risk to some grants, because all our grants that we do get from the province, such as OSIF and CCBF, are reliant on having an up-to-date asset management plan.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This question that I had was not in reference in any way, shape, or form to the asset management. It was in the relationship to roads, which the Director did answering the fact that it was infrastructure costs. So I think I got my answer, but I got a whole bunch of other ones too. But that's all right.
Seems like, yeah, there is.
Thank you.
Yeah. Councillor Chichuk?
I would just move the question, Mr. Chair.
You're calling the question, Councillor Chichuk?
I am.
Okay. So the question has been called, members of committee. Go ahead, Mr. Clerk. And that carries. Thank you, members of committee. Moving on, item A56-24, Fire Chief Dennis Fisher, but tonight we have Deputy Fire Chief Mr. Hofsink. Information Report, WLFD 14, 2024, monthly update, October 2024. The recommendation that Information Report, WLFD 14, 2024, titled Monthly Updated, October 2024, dated November 18th, 2024, be received for information. Need a mover? Councillor Riley, seconded by Councillor Broderick. Any comments or questions? Councillor Riley.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess through you to our Deputy Chief there. I just wanted to more note anything for the public who probably aren't going to be able to easily have access to this report here. But under the fire department activities, you guys managed to fundraise and donate $5,000 to West Lincoln Memorial Hospital there. And so I think that's worth noting for the public records. I think that's incredible. So thank you and your service and your crew there, because I think that it's going to go a long way with the hospital, as well as it's amazing that despite putting out fires, you guys still find time to be actively involved in the community, and it's amazing. Thank you. I don't know if you have anything to add to that, feel free, but I just wanted to make that noted.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Anybody else, member of the committee? Okay, perfect. And the vote will be in front of you, members of the committee. Moving on, item that carries. Moving on, A 57-24, Director of Finance and Treasurer Donna DeFilippis and Manager of Finance and Deputy Treasurer Caitlin Rapav's recommendation report T23 2024 Quarter 3 Financial Update September 2024. Recommendation report T23 2024 titled Quarter 3 Financial Update September 2024 dated November 18th 2024 be received, and that council approve the funding of the 2020 Smithville North Drain Assessment Update of $5,088 through the operating fund. Members of the committee, I need a mover and a seconder for this. Madam Mayor, seconded by Councillor Broderick. Comments or questions on this? Was that you moving, Councillor Chichuk? Sorry, I didn't see you. If it was that.
I was just moving the item, Mr. Chair, but
Okay.
you've got a mover and a seconder
Okay,
now.
thank you. Sorry, I saw that last minute there. Any comments or questions for this motion? Councillor Rayner?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Through the Director of Finance, how does an operating fund differ from a reserve?
Through you, Chairman Trombetta, to Councillor Rayner. So the question is, how does an operating fund differ from a reserve? Okay, so an operating fund is where the township pays its daily expenses and collects revenue to operate the municipality. Within that operating fund, as you will recall, we have transfers to reserves. So those are funded through taxes, water rates, and money flows through the operating fund into something called a transfer to reserve, and funds are put into a reserve. Then when we try to fund capital projects and special projects, we transfer funds out of those reserves. So they are interrelated. The operating fund, the main source of revenue for that is our taxation. We also receive some grants. And reserves are funded through the operating fund, and in other ways, other instances, they're funded through user fees. For instance, the building reserve, that's funded 100% through building fees. So I don't know if you need more.
Thank you. You said the reserve is funded through the operating fund. So if the reserves are funded through the operating fund, then what's the difference between an operating fund and a reserve? They're both the same.
Through you, Chairman. Through you, Chairman Trombetta, to Councillor Rayner. I don't know if they're the same, because I think of a home and you might have a bank account that you pay all your bills out of. So that's maybe your daily account doesn't collect a lot of interest. It's the one you pay your bills out of. And that's perhaps where your weekly pay goes, or your biweekly pay. Then in your home, you might have TFSAs or RSPs where you put aside extra money. It's funded probably through your pay or perhaps you're lucky enough to get an inheritance or something like that, and you put extra money away. And that money is set aside for special projects. So you can look at the municipality the same way. The operating fund is sort of like your daily bank account that you pay your bills out of. And then your reserve fund are like those saving accounts that individuals might have. So they are not the same. They are interrelated. However, when we say something's being funded through the operating fund, that means it's being funded through the budget that the township has approved, which is funded from property tax and other grants.
Thank you, Councilor Rader. Councilor Riley? I didn't think you did.
It's just that the Director of Finance just said you may have RSPs or whatever, but you would fund that through your bi-weekly pay or whatever, which is your operating fund. So your operating fund is supplying your capital for your capital. So to me, they're identical. One comes from the other, but they can't exist without being together. Without an operating fund, you don't have anything to go into capital. And I just think it's a play on words to me. An operating fund comes from taxes, yes, but you take the money out of that and you put it into reserve. So in reality, an operating fund is part of a reserve fund.
Okay.
There's.
Thank you, Councilor.
Thanks.
Yeah. Councilor Riley?
All right, thank you. I guess you back to our director there. So I just looking for clarity. So under our reserve funds, we have library, and I don't believe, if I understand this correctly, and I think I recall this from budget time as well, like we don't have free access to that. Is that specifically for the library? Like they operate out of that, and this is just on our spreadsheet, so we're aware of it, or is this money that's already being collected annually by taxes that is contributing to a fund that we are then later using to meet the needs of the library when they come forward to make their request?
Through Chairman Trombetta to Councillor Riley. So when the township approves the library budget, included in that budget is a transfer to the library reserve.
Yes.
So as part of their budget request annually, they request funds to be transferred to their reserve. That reserve is later used to fund projects that they request. In addition, any annual surplus that the library may have within their operating budget would go into the library reserve. So it would never be part of the township's overall surplus or deficit.
Okay.
And on the other hand, if the library ever had a operating deficit, it would be funded through this library reserve.
Okay, and so my follow-up, Mr. Chair, if I may, and so you answered I think you answered my question there as far as this is not something that council could take money from to pay for something else that is specifically governed by the board of directors on the library board. So if that's the case, in the event that there would be a deficit, how does the library board maneuver should they not have funds and council not support any additional funding?
Through Chairman Trombetta to Councillor Riley, if there was an in-year deficit in the library, we would draw funds from the library reserve so that it would balance.
Well, so my question, Mr. Chair, if I may, back to you, is right now I'm looking at, I know that it shows closing at 549.9, so about 550,000. Looks like there's about just shy of 75,000 in commitments. What happens with the remaining uncommitted 475? Let's just say something happens, whatever decision they make that puts them, let's say, 25,000 in the deficit. You're saying that they would have to come back to council. I'm assuming you would have to come back to council to help them get themselves out of the deficit. And in no way, to be clear, I'm not saying that this is a reality or anything that's happening at the board. I'm just trying to plan for the future should there be a situation there. But whatever that council is, if they don't approve that, how does that library board get themselves out of the financial trouble should they ever be in that situation?
Through you, Chairman Trombetta to Councillor Riley, I am going to split it into two different scenarios, if that's all right. If it's an operating deficit, so in 2024, if there's an operating deficit, the definition on the reserve enables the administration to use the library reserve to balance. So that is part of the library reserve in year, how we are able to use it. If council is approving the library reserve in a given year, and it's council's decision to perhaps allocate less funds, the library would have two options. They would look at their 10-year capital plan to determine, okay, we need our reserve to fund all these projects. Do we eliminate some of these projects, or would we change the year on some of these projects so that we would not require such a large reserve? And it is possible in a given year that you could use a transfer from the library reserve to help offset a budget increase that the library board may ask for. However, that's not something that would be sustainable in the long run, because you'd eventually, that reserve would eventually go to zero. So it could be used, in an off year. So even though the balance, is $475,000, if you look at the 10-year capital plan, we do have different projects that that it can be allocated to in the future. However, it's not officially approved.
Okay.
It's a plan.
And so I thank you for that, and I believe I follow what you're saying there. I guess the other part of my question I was also trying to seek clarity on is the safety nets around the governance of that. Should they ever be fully maxed out of the reserve, and that they have expenses, let's say operating expenses, that need to be paid to staff, their own staff, and they don't have the money for it? I don't think you're able to answer that, because what I'm looking for is, what is the worst case scenario if they have $0 to their name and they have to pay the bills? And I'm not saying this is going to happen. Again, I'm thinking like down the road here, should there be a situation, how do they bail themselves out if they're ever faced a deficit that they can't fall back on reserves? And should council not support that? Are we forced to support that despite the governance decisions that they make that we have no way or say on?
Okay, through you, Councillor Trombetta, I'm not 100% familiar with the Library Act, because I think some of that would be outlined in that act, and I apologize, I don't know it. However, every year, the library requests a value, a dollar amount from the township in order to operate. So similar to like a police board, if the township does have the option not to fund it 100% as perhaps the board may request. However, I think there is an obligation as a municipality that we do have to fund the library, but I'm not 100% sure.
Which is what
so
I'm trying to get to that understanding, and
Yeah.
maybe I can talk to you, outside of tonight, and we can kind of look into that another time. But
I think
curious.
they're all good questions. I think they're good questions to ask. I think we're on the path to budget time
Yes,
questions,
agreed.
and I think at this point, save these questions. I think we'll have a good fulsome discussion during budget time. I don't think they're wrong now. I just think that we're gonna get more depth afterwards as we get towards budget at that time. So
appreciate that. Thank you.
thank you. Seeing any other questions, the vote will be in front of you. Just on you, Councillor Chichuk.
Yes.
Just awaiting your vote,
Oh, I'm sorry.
if it's up in your screen there.
Sorry, I have to flip back and forth between Zoom and the other.
There it
Apologies.
is. It carries. Thank you. Thank you, Councillor. Okay, moving on. Item A5824, Trooper McBride, an information report, CAO 05-2024, an organizational restructuring. The recommendation that the information report CAO 05-2024 titled Organizational Structure dated November 18th, 2024 be received. So it looks like we're having a presentation first. Do you, council, want to wait for the presentation, or do you need a mover and a seconder to start it? So I need a mover and a seconder. Councillor Riley, Madam Mayor. We'll want to save comments and questions after if that's okay with the will of council, once Trooper's done presenting. Is that okay? Oh. Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mr. CAO.
Thank you, and good evening, Chairman Trombetta and members of committee. I'm pleased to be in front of you this evening to speak about the organizational restructuring that's been worked on over the past number of months. As you know and quite familiar with, this community, West Lincoln, is set to grow to nearly 37,000 people, nearly 40,000 people by 2051. And it's important, with those growth targets now before in front of the municipality, that the organization begin to position itself so that we're able to have the growth be meaningful and take place in a way that's helpful and desired by the community rather than just growing for growth's sake. And part of that is making sure that your organization, the municipal corporation, is aligned to deliver your strategic plan and making sure that those matters that are a priority to council are also a priority to the administration. And the structure of the administration is important in being able to deliver that. I don't know if we can get the slides up in the council agenda, potentially no. If not, you can look, council can just simply look at Appendix A at the end of this report. What you'll see there is...
Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt, Mr. CEO. Is it possible for IT to get up? Because otherwise people at home will not be able to reference what you're talking about. So if through you, Mr. Chair, if you could just see if IT is able to put that up on the screen, because we have it in front of us, but I can just imagine what Zoom looks like right now. And if Councillor Chichek's having, if her computer's she has to bounce back and forth, it might be more convenient for her to have it also on screen.
What? We'll wait it out. We got a bit of time. What? It's on the agenda. Councillor Chichek, we're just waiting to try to see if we can get it on the screen for the people at home to see it. It's just delayed at the moment.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. You can see the
Okay.
visual is going to be easier for people at home to follow.
And actually, yes, myself as well, because I have the agenda up here as well. So, Councillor Chichek, can you see that on your end as well?
Yes, I can. Thank you very much.
No problem. Thank you for pointing that out, Councillor Riley.
No problem, Mr. Chair. I just think the visual is going to make it that much
Yeah.
easier.
Okay.
And Mr. Chairman, I believe we're set when the
Yes,
committee
go
is-
ahead, Mr. CAO. Yeah, we can see that now. Thank you.
All right, and thank you, committee. My apologies on that. Before you on the screen, as Appendix A, is the current organizational chart. This is a functional chart only, so you do not see the names of employees, but you see the names of departments, divisions, and the various offices of the municipality, headed, of course, by council at the top. The existing structure had 5 different departments: Department of Finance, Public Works and Recreation, Planning and Building, Legislative Services and Clerk's Office, Fire Services, and the West Lincoln Public Library sat on the senior management team as well, but it's important to understand that that is an external agency to the municipality and does not fall underneath the corporate umbrella. This organizational chart had been working for the municipality for some time. It's been a number of years since it has been updated, and the timing is now in order to make sure that this is aligned with council's plans to move forward, and making sure that the strategic plan in place is able to be implemented, in addition to positioning us to prepare for all of the growth and development ahead. So the need for change, I've spoken of already, the significant growth and development that's on the horizon for the municipality. It's important that a strategic stance be adopted by the administration in order to receive the growths ahead and process the applications. It's important that your organizational structure is aligned to council's strategic plan. And I think what you'll see as we move through the new organizational chart and also following along with the report before you this evening, the changes do their best to align the delivery of council's strategic plan with the organizational structure. The new structure takes a look at how we're delivering internal services and trying to package those together underneath one director leadership in order to support properly and more strongly those externally focused departments on service delivery to the public. It also takes a focused approach to the delivery of parks and recreation services, something that was previously sitting in the department along with Public Works. Establishing an administrative stance to plan for the growth, and also taking a look at legal services, council operations, and bylaw enforcement underneath one department as well. So this is the new organizational chart and what administration is working towards implementation. This continues to move forward with 5 departments. The only change at the top department level is introducing a new department of Community and Protective Services, and Fire Services will now begin reporting into that new director position. Community and Protective Services will also take care of parks, recreation, and facilities underneath one umbrella, and the West Lincoln Public Library. That relationship, along with that of the Niagara Regional Police, will be carried by that new director level position. That director is a new position for the municipality and is now under recruitment as well. To the other side of the chart, Corporate Services is the restructured Department of Finance. Corporate Services, like I mentioned previously, takes a look at managing all of internal services underneath one umbrella. It contains the Division of Finance, the Division of Information Technology. A new Supervisor of Accounting position is being created within that department. This position is going to be needed to help you manage the new revenue streams and processes coming out of growth, the development charges, front-ending agreements. There's going to be a significant amount of new work on finance. In order to make sure that municipalities are successful in implementing that, this new position is required to free up capacity at the director level and the manager of finance level to give you that longer range dashboard approach to the municipality's finances and adopt a more strategic stance in looking at how to move funding models forward into the future. The final change is human resources, which you can see in the bottom blue boxes, and over time the objective will be to migrate human resources into the Department of Corporate Services. Currently, and for the time being, human resources will continue to report into the Office of the CAO, as we're still in the process of setting up and making sure we understand what the human resources service delivery model needs to look like in West Lincoln. As we only have one human resources personnel at the moment, it's important that we be clear as to what human resources is providing and what it's not providing, and what role it's playing in a support capacity to the directors and leadership in the organization. The Department of Operations is being established and is restructured from the previous Department of Public Works and Recreation. This department is now taking a very specific look at the operations and maintenance of municipal assets. This is being composed of the Capital Projects Division. It will have Roads and Fleet, which is currently referred to as Public Works. And there is a third box that's appearing below. This is something that will be looked at over time. This isn't something that you're going to see necessarily in the draft, well, something you are not going to see in the draft 2025 budget. But as we get more into water and wastewater, water resources is a division that needs to be established to look after your water, wastewater services, the conveyance of that, but also storm ponds, which is, Council received a presentation, I believe, a couple of months ago that shows a very significant funding need in that area, and that work will also need some focused supervision and leadership to deliver going forward into the future. So this will continue to be a very busy service area within the municipality as the number of assets and our operations continue to grow with the size of the municipality. The new Department of Growth and Sustainability will be stood up, and this director position is under recruitment right now. This department restructures engineering, planning, and building services underneath one umbrella so that we're able to have one department that's responsible for managing, planning, and delivering the growth and development that this municipality needs in order to move forward. What you do see is the migration of the engineering function from the former Department of Public Works and Recreation into growth and sustainability. The position is being renamed the Manager of Civil Land Development and Engineering. That is not a new position. That is a restructured position from the former Department of Public Works and Recreation. Moving engineering together with building are two sides of the same coin that are required in order to deliver your new infrastructure in those communities. This role will continue to play a joint role in supporting the Department of Operations and the Department of Growth and Sustainability. The role as it currently exists within Public Works and Recreations does support planning and building services, but structuring them underneath one department allows for decision-making underneath one director and more efficient delivery of development and better plan development into this community. The final box at the bottom is economic development. That is a function that is going to be assigned to this new Department of Growth and Sustainability. It is not, again, something that you're going to see in the draft 2025 budget, but it is being shadowed in as something that Council is likely going to want to consider as we begin to get new industrial development, non-residential commercial development into the municipality. This role to help coordinate and attract new development, focus on retaining existing businesses, is going to be something that will be a benefit to the municipality in the future. But before we look at such a role, it's important that we get some growth and development going so we have something to economically develop. Legal and legislative services is a restructuring of legislative services in the clerk's office. Additional functions are being added into this department. Primarily, you see legislative services that is going to be managed through an external general counsel role. This role is going to be a tremendous use within the administration and to council in order to centrally manage legal services. It will, like I believe I mentioned, continue to be delivered externally. This is not an in-house role, but over time the objective is going to be that we migrate that into legal and legislative services. For the time being, just like with human resources, until the legal model is refined and landed on, it will continue to reside in the CAO office. Communications was temporarily in the CAO office, and it will be moved back into legal and legislative services. And finally, bylaw services will be restructured out of planning and building and into the Department of Legal and Legislative Services. There's a tremendous amount of synergies that exist when you have bylaw services and legal paired up together. Quite oftentimes, when those aren't, you have trouble if matters end up getting to prosecution. Having a legal prosecution path and enforcement path hand in glove creates quite a bit of efficiencies that will be important as we begin dealing with more and more issues related to growth. So this is an organizational structure that is before you tonight for information. We are in the midst of the restructuring process. I mentioned earlier that the director position of Community and Protective Services is out for recruitment, as is the Director of Growth and Sustainability. We're right now targeting January 6th for the activation of the new organizational chart, but that's going to be dependent on the successful recruitments of the two remaining director positions. So once we do have those positions recruited and in the building, we will commence the restructuring. The new department will stand up, and growth and sustainability and those restructured positions will move at that time as well. And until then, we will continue to move through with the organizational plans to deliver the restructuring on the date when the directors do arrive, and hopefully that continues to be January 6th. And with that, Chairman Trombetta, I turn it back to you, and happy to take any questions from yourself or members of council.
Sure, Mr. CAO. Members of committee, any questions for this presentation? Councilor Rayner.
Thank you. Thank you for your presentation. The only thing is I represent the agricultural community, and you keep saying growth, 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 and I keep going, oh no, oh no, oh no. I don't necessarily believe this 30,000. I mean, Trudeau's already reducing the immigration numbers, so I think that number's coming down. And I don't really feel that we need to destroy the town because other people are dictating that we have to overpopulate our beautiful rural agricultural town and make it into a mini city. So there's a lot of this that bothers me. I know you're motivated to proceed and do things that we haven't done before. I appreciate and respect that. But it's not, at least at this point, it doesn't appear to be with the preservation of agriculture in mind. It's let's see how many houses we can build and plug up the roads here and make this a congested community, which is not really what West Lincoln is about to me. Living here for almost 50 years of my life, it's a beautiful agricultural community, and it seems like it's taken an awful big turn in the opposite direction, and that's scary to me. I know you're talking about growth and you're referring to the area that's already been approved for growth, but it's still, that growth is going to change the whole complexity of this community just with volume of traffic filling all those spots with homes. So to me, it looks scary in the future. It doesn't look comfortable. I'm just being honest as a guy that lives in the country and enjoys going into town because it's a beautiful rural town, and once in a while we even see tractors go through town because people don't mind that in this area. But the direction you're heading in is outright growth, and that to me is in conflict with agriculture. So I can't say I love what you're doing. I understand what you're doing. I respect what you're doing, and that's the mandate you've been given. You're doing your job. But it's not really what I think a lot of us want to see this beautiful, small, little rural community turn into. Just because somebody outside that doesn't live in this township is dictating what our numbers are going to be down the road. Well, I can tell them where they can stick that. We'll do what's right for the people who live here, and come hell or high water, I'll fight you on it. But I'm not going to destroy my town because you're sitting back in some high office somewhere saying, well, the population of West Lincoln should be this in 2020. Well, it'll be what it's going to be, but it'll be because we want it, not because you're telling me. Our flag is still democratic as far as I can figure. So somebody's going to dictate to me? No, that's not the policy. We'll work with you, but don't tell me what to do. Work with me, and we'll try to work together so that we please both parties.
Okay, Councillor made some valid points. That's no question. There's no question you want to ask about the chart or anything. I know you gave. I'm not.
Well, the only thing
There's hold on. I know you gave comments, but now I'm going to hold the comment. Now, is there a question
Okay,
in
there
those
is one
comments?
question, if you don't mind. How do I put this?
Not a comment, question to
No, it is a
Trooper.
question. You've changed the names of some of this stuff, and for the average Joe Blow, even myself with the university education, I'm looking at this saying, why are we making something in our small town sound like this is big-time city positions, like manager of civil land development engineering? Take that to 100 people in the township of West Lincoln, and 95 will say, what the heck is he talking about?
LinkedIn.
It's not speaking English that people here understand. Is there some way, the question is there some way we can modify it so that when somebody looks at these titles, they're not scratching their head?
I think that's just the new wave of society. You know, there's LinkedIn profiles that have different titles, and I think that's just the way that the world is moving. Mr. CAO, you can answer that, and then I'll go to Councillor Riley.
Certainly. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And points very much understood. The reason that first of all, beginning with growth and sustainability, rather than Department of Development, and I think it goes back to the comments at the beginning there, the concern about making sure agricultural lands are being stewarded, protected. That's the DNA of this municipality. Part of the mandate there, as you can see in the title, isn't just growth, but it's the sustainability of those agricultural lands and making sure that we're driving the idea that good urban planning protects agricultural lands. It makes sure that urban sprawl isn't continuing, it's being managed. And it isn't just being accepted however it comes, it's being thoughtfully accepted in a way that's going to work for the residents and citizens of this municipality in Smithville and throughout the rural areas. And that's part of what this department needs to be able to move forward in a discussion. It isn't growth for the sake of growth, it's growth to deliver the future and the services that the people of this municipality want to see. And that is why the department has been named Growth and Sustainability as opposed to just Department of Development. Civil Land Development Engineering, it's a very good point, and one I could probably elaborate on. It is different from just engineering. There are more than one engineering functions within this municipality. We don't have the staff, though, at the moment to fill all of the different positions with multiple bodies. We have one position in-house right now that looks after engineering. Right now, that position is engineering coordinator within the Department of Public Works and Recreation. This department supports the civil land development function in planning and building, but it also supports capital projects. It also supports projects being done in operations right now, including water and wastewater. So we're trying to get a little bit more specific in the titles of the positions that we have in the municipalities so that when we are growing and we are adding in new positions, that we can then attach the appropriate name for the function that they're going to be providing. So there will be other functions in engineering at some point in the future that will reside in public works that will likely carry a broader engineering mandate than only civil land development. But civil land development is the function that's required within growth and sustainability. So point well taken and understood where you're coming from. Hopefully that explanation provides a little bit of insight and color as to why this was done the way it was.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Councillor Riley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And just Mr. CEO took the words out of my mouth as far as my understanding is modernizing our community and planning for the growth is so much more responsible than how we've been doing business for years and years before. You know, we're now trying to plan ahead and have the safeguards in place and prevent the urban sprawl while focusing the growth in a controlled area, which is actually, I think, aligns with your views. And we can all that's here. No one's been more passionate and committed to protecting the agricultural communities other than yourself there. And so I get your I get your concern, and I understand where you're coming from. But to echo our CEO's comments, it's about doing what's appropriate and what's responsible if we're actually going to do what it is that you're passionate about doing, which is protecting that. And I think, when I look at this and what we've been, looking at for the future, we can't kind of sit on our hands and do nothing. Whatever that growth looks like, it's coming. And, whether it's 30,000, 40,000, or 5,000, we still need to plan responsibly. We need to be smart with how we do this stuff, and things don't just happen overnight. We know part of our growth issue is infrastructure in the ground and the costs that are related to that, and how we're going to plan for that. So I think this is the right course of direction. I think this is also what's going to allow us, we know when stuff goes in the tax base, it never comes out. And so as members of council here, our job is to try to look for efficiencies to prevent or reduce the rate taxes grow. And I do believe that this is the appropriate direction. I guess my question, Mr. Chair, through you to our CEO, if maybe for those who are looking at the screen at home, I don't mean to sound like I'm picking on the library board tonight by any means, but and seeing how it's broken into the question before I asked and it was a longer question than I anticipated it to be, but looking at where the library board is going to be under the new organization and having it broken down more of a dotted because it's an external service, if maybe you could speak a little bit towards that rationale in terms of how they're going to be reporting to the director, because they don't have to report to us. They run independently, and even though we have some shared facilities with them, for the most part, that's I just want to make sure it's clear for the public how their function is actually going to work.
Yeah,
So
no
through-
problem.
to
Yeah,
the-
Mr. CEO.
Thank you, and through you, Mr. Chair, thank you for the question, Councillor. So that's quite correct. The library is an external agency and is its own corporation. It exists under its own body of legislation, the Libraries Act. And so at no point underneath the old structure or the new structure was West Lincoln Public Libraries a part of this municipal corporation. And how they do exist is they have their own board. Council supplies the annual operating grant. The library board in turn presents its annual budget to council, and then council debates the budget and supplies the operating grant. Outside of that, they are their own organization. There's no fiduciary responsibility that the library has to the corporation. They do not report to the CAO, and they will continue to not report to this director position. What this position is meant to do is help us carry the relationship with the library. It's also meant to carry the relationship with the Niagara Regional Police. So there is a place, a logical place for the library to continue what we believe and what we look back on as a very good relationship with the West Lincoln Public Library. This is a very valued service, a very appreciated service that is being delivered by the library board. So the new organizational structure represents this as a liaison relationship rather than a direct reporting relationship, and for that reason the library is no longer sitting on the senior management team. We're now calling it the senior leadership team, but their presence in the community is of course very much valued. This is a better reporting structure given the nature of the library compared to that of the role of the municipality.
Perfect. I appreciate that, and I think for members of the public who are watching or who end up becoming aware of this, will certainly understand that. I just want to make sure, and I think you've highlighted that as we've heard tonight, no changes and always received well, and that we understand that we're still working together at building and fostering that relationship. We're all working for the same community, and I want to make sure that relationship is respected, but making sure also that we're running things appropriately and how it should be run, I think, is the responsible way of going. So that's all my questions, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Riley. Councillor Broderick.
Thank you, Chair. Through you to Mr. McBride. Thank you very much for your presentation, and we're excited to see where this is going to take us into 2025 and beyond. I believe you started sometime in the summer, which would get you to about 100 or so days. So it looks like you've done an immense amount of work to get us here today and in this presentation. My question for you tonight is, what is your timeline around the evaluation of your organizational changes? And because we all know that, best laid plans sometimes maybe need tweaking along the way, is there a plan for you in the future that you'll present to council or committee about how things are going and any tweaks that may be appropriate along the way?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and through you, very good questions. And yes, what we would like to begin doing is internally more of, and it won't begin until next year, but we do want to begin annual performance reviews with all of staff, which includes setting those performance goals for each year, so that we're not just looking at how do you perform this year, but where are we going over the next year. And those organizational goals would then need to align to council's strategic plan. And that's part of the reporting back on the performance of the organization to council is how are we doing in delivering your strategic plan? And ideally what you're going to see is the delivery of your strategic plan becomes more streamlined and you are seeing your strategic plan come to life through this organization. So as we get past budget and we get back into that point where we want to take a look at the strategic plan and how we've been doing, council can then consider changes to the strategic plan as needed. We would then make those appropriate changes to the organization to make sure we're continuing to be in lockstep with council. And so in that regard, through council strategic planning, supported by administration, that's the process that we want to be looking at going forward every year to making sure that the good work that council wants to see done is aligned and the administration's in lockstep.
Thank you very much, and through you, Chair, I can certainly see, your decision around taking Parks and Rec out of Public Works probably had a large part to do with how important a lot of those items were to us in our strategic plan. So greatly appreciate, and I'm sure Director DiPaolo is pretty happy too, that has been carved out of his portfolio and can, perhaps given the important intention that it requires as well, because we all know Parks and Rec is probably takes a seat back of Public Works a lot of times. So glad to see that that's been carved off on its own. So thank you. That's all my
Thank you.
questions.
Madam Mayor?
So thank you, Mr. Chair. Through you, I just really have a couple of comments I want to make for the sake of the public who may be watching or who may watch this later. And that is specifically to thank our CAO for doing this publicly. And I want to make it clear that this is not the first look that Council has had at this. We've had an opportunity to have a confidential session where it was explained thoroughly to us, the who's and the hows and the whys. I know that it then moved after being with Council to senior staff and a discussion with senior staff, especially a discussion with those who may or may not be affected. And Councillor Bradrick has just referred to our Director of currently Public Works and Recreation that's it did affect his portfolio. So those discussions were had. And then the thing that I really appreciated that I think the public need to know is then our CAO held an entire staff meeting, actually jam-packed in this room, so that every staff member who wanted to hear firsthand what it was that was happening, it stopped the rumors, it stopped the questioning, it stopped the anticipation and second guessing of what was going on and why and who and all of the rest of that. It's been a very open, above board process, and I think it will lead us well into the future. So I thank you for doing this publicly tonight as well.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Councillor Chichuk, do you have anything to add?
I believe that everything has been said, and I guess the only thing I could possibly ask is that as we proceed forward and should growth change direction, slow down, speed up, or whatever, I am sure, and maybe I put it in the form of a question, will our CAO be looking at this and saying the timing is off and we will be putting off what I thought we would do this year because the growth hasn't been there and will continue with, for instance, external legislative services from for a while longer because something has changed. So as things change, so will its organizational charts timing. Am I correct?
Mr. CAO?
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Chairman Trombetta, and through you to Councillor Chichuk. That's correct. So the organizational structure from a functional perspective you see tonight will be the one that we move into. However, as growth projections change or demands for services within the municipality from council change, then the organization has to respond. So these things are never rigid, they're always fluid. So I believe the answer to the question that you're asking me tonight is it is yes. The organization will be under continuous monitoring from a KPI perspective, and we hope to get into more of that setting next year. But that's going to help us make sure that the services that we're providing are not degrading over time, and if we're not seeing additional pressures in service delivery, then we wouldn't need to be adding people to prop up that service delivery. So I hope that answers your question. And just before I complete, I would be remiss if I didn't thank the entire staff complement that you have here at West Lincoln for helping with all this. This wasn't something that I could have done without the help and good work of everybody that's working here in this organization, supporting you and the people of West Lincoln. You truly have a remarkable team working for you.
Councillor Chichuk, that's it?
I'm fine.
Okay, thank you, Councillor. Councillor Rayner for a second time?
Thank you,
Oh,
Mr.
third.
Chair.
Third, you said? Or you said third?
Through the CAO, you said the purpose of what you're doing is to control urban sprawl. Is that correct?
Mr. CAO, yeah.
That is part of the purpose, yes.
Okay, I'm not sure if you're aware of it, and I'm not sure what happened in Lakeshore, but long time ago, I guess about 16, 18 years ago, the region decided that they were going to lock the hamlets up and you cannot expand the hamlets. And we have a lot of them. And just a couple years ago, they unlocked it. And the hamlets of Grassy, Silverdale, Winslow, Casterville, Fulton, Warner, and Grimsby at 20 Road were allowed to expand. And now we're talking about controlling urban sprawl. Can you please help me? Because the direction we've got from the region on the reversal, I mean, it should have been the other way around now. They should have been coming 2 years ago and said, no more in the hamlets because we want to focus and do it all in town so that we don't create urban sprawl. They have created urban sprawl by reversing their decision. How are you going to control urban sprawl when we've approved a few years ago the fact that these hamlets can expand, which is totally contrary to what you said we're going to try to prevent? I'm confused. I need help. I don't like what I see. You're saying nice things, but what the region's saying is the opposite.
Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to Councillor Rayner. So we can only work within the plans that have been approved by the bodies that we have approving them. So these are all growth management questions, and they're good ones, but we probably would be beneficial having a more dedicated session, a training session around growth development, growth management. How are we planning in these outlying communities? What's the staging, and in what year do we expect things to grow, where and when? There are levers that the municipality can have in timing that, and if council wanted to have more conversation, discussion around that, we could certainly do that. I'm not prepared this evening, though, to be able to get too deep into growth management in some of those hamlets. I'd have to have planning staff here to support that conversation.
Okay, so we'll postpone those questions for a night on planning.
Thank you. One more then to the CAO.
Quickly.
To the CAO, please. Yes, Mr. Chair. Is there something we can do then, since you want to go forward aggressively with regards to the urban boundaries? We've here to say, okay, we're doing what you want. We're going to aggressively do this, which I think is going to create traffic nightmares around here. But anyway, that's another subject. And let's go back to the region and say, about those urban boundaries expansions you want in those hamlets, well, that's kind of contrary. If we want to do this in town, can't you be happy with just that? And let's go back to what we had 16 or 18 years ago. Lock those hamlets up so that we don't have the urban sprawl intentionally going at the same time we got the urban sprawl starting up in town. We got a double whammo. Could we not work in such a way to say, okay, pick one, but you're not going to get both? Is there some way we can control this, is what I'm asking you, sir?
Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. There are always ways to control growth. Council has a number of levers at its disposal, but we would be better served in a dedicated session around that in order to make sure we had planning staff here giving you better information than I could off the fly this evening.
Thank you.
Thank you. Microphone. I had a question. I'm trying to remember what my question was.
Sorry.
But I'm thinking it was to the CAO. We have in the director section, we have manager of roads / public works interim, but that's not an interim position.
Correct, Mr. Chairman. That it's not an interim position. That is a permanent position. There's some terminology in there that we're still working with. As when I was doing this organizational chart in other parts of the country, operations is seen as the overarching name for the department. Public Works is subsidiary to that. I've been told that here it's the reverse. So we're working through what these are actually called and what they're not called, but at some point when we get water resources broken out of the role that is currently the operations manager role, that's when more specifically that role would focus on roads and fleet, and water resources would be broken out into its own area. So perhaps the naming there is confusing, but it will continue to be called Public Works in the interim.
Maybe through you or to the director of Public Works. The manager of capital projects is a project manager, and then the manager of roads will be, the manager at the yards. Correct? Is that the idea? Okay, all right. That's why I was confused with the Public Works interim, because that is not an interim role. It's a manager of that role who's in charge of our snow removal, so on and so forth.
Absolutely correct.
Okay. So it was just a little confusing on just trying to understand that aspect, but that's the only question I had. So thank you for the chart. Thank you for the informative session. There was a lot of work put into this. Council, like the mayor did say, this is our third time seeing it. So we've had some time to digest this. How we're going to get it all through, I guess and how it's going to come into play will obviously dictate through our budget process and discussions through that and moving forward. So members of the committee, again, I'd like to, thanks for the work that the CAO did with this and bringing that forward to us. So moving on, we got to do the vote. So Mr. Clerk, sorry, I got taken away with all the questions and messed up my rhythm. And that carries. Thank you. Anyways, moving on. Other business. Item A 5924, CAO Trooper McBride staff accomplishment. Mr. CAO.
Back to my other chair. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We did want to recognize Donna DeFilippis this evening for receiving the Next Gen Leadership Award for the degree of leadership that's been recognized, providing that support internally to the development and professional development of staff and her outstanding leadership over her tenure at the Township of West Lincoln. Thank you, Ms. DeFilippis, for everything that you've done here.
Thank you, Mr. CAO. Moving on, item A 6024, members of committee, any verbal updates from any boards? Start to my right, Mr. Mayor, Mr. Rayner, not Mr. Mayor, definitely not Mr. Rayner. Yeah, Mr. Rayner, Councilor Rayner.
I accept your apology.
I apologize. I said Mr. Rayner. Councilor Riley. Madam Mayor.
Just a reminder to let staff know if you're taking part in the Santa Claus Parade. The deadline has passed, but if you still want to come out, we want you to be there. Council is walking together close to the front of the parade, so come up and walk with us.
Yeah. Councilor Bradrick. I just have one. We have a strategic planning meeting on December 12th for Penn West, followed by our annual meeting after that meeting is complete. So that's what we are doing. Just wanted to let everybody know that as well. So I'll start to my right again for to item A 6124, members of council. Councilor Rayner, any form of nature? Thank you, Mr. Chair. No problem. Councilor Riley?
Yes, Mr. Chair. I guess just briefly, just a reminder to the community that starting today, there's the kickoff campaign for the Holiday Smile Cookie, where half the proceeds raised are going to our community forts, and the other half goes to, I think, Tim's Camp or something like that. So, if you can, please support their cause. I think that's an excellent opportunity to give back to, the youth the youth out there that depend on those resources. And I guess, what do we have? Is it not this Saturday, next Saturday with the Santa Claus Parade? So, as the mayor just mentioned, I don't know if I was one of the ones that forgot to RSVP, but I will be there. So I'll reach out to staff.
You're dressed for it.
I am already dressed for it. I'm like this for the last few meetings. I got to get in. I got about 10 ties I got to work through.
Yeah.
So, thank you.
Madam Mayor?
So this time around, I'm just going to add on the tree lighting, the community tree lighting, 6:15 on the 27th, Wednesday night. Free hot dogs, free hot chocolate, free carol singing, and free socializing with residents.
Councilor Bradrick? Councilor Chichuk, anything?
Well, Mr. Chair, to build on what Councillor Riley had to say, I got a notice from Tim Hortons that they're saying anybody who's got 2 or 3 hours to be able to donate to icing smile cookies or bagging them are happy. The Tim Hortons are happy to have those kinds of volunteers. So you can go in and ask for Violet, the manager of the local Tim Hortons, and our store is usually second in Ontario, actually, last couple of years, in both smile cookies for Christmas and for the spring sale of them. So it takes a lot of people to bag and ice those cookies, but if you've got a couple hours, I'm sure they'd be able to put you to work. I plan on volunteering closer to the end of the week, so when I'm back from Ottawa. So
Thank you, Councillor Chichuk.
that's it.
The thing myself, I know the mayor put out gave us a list of stuff that's for coming up, and she mentioned it, and we did mention it. Maybe I'm asking to the CAO. We do have, not everything, but certain stuff in the municipality, like a tree lighting and the Santa Claus parade. Would that be able to get put into our calendars as also reminder dates? Because, again, I don't always have that piece of paper walking with me all the time, but which was very, thoughtful of the mayor. But in future, can we get like important dates put into our calendars, just like these meetings are by the secretary or something, Mr. CAO?
This is the special events or the,
I think more like town related, like let's say like events would be like, let's say coming up, the tree lighting ceremony or,
in the Outlook calendar, not the municipal website?
yeah, our Outlook calendar if
Absolutely.
possible.
We'll
Okay,
take care of that.
thank you.
Just to add that, Mr. Chair, I think that'd be very helpful, actually, even with the RSVPs and stuff like that. Like, as you know, we all know, Mayor probably gets 10 times more than what we get, but we get copious amounts of emails. And so some of that stuff sometimes gets forgotten or it slips through the radar just because we have to go through so much.
And what I want to add to that, and Madam Mayor, maybe you can assist with this coming in the future. I don't know if this is the right time, just putting it in this, but I didn't have an opportunity to put it into my agenda somewhere. But let's say, someone's, you have a busy day and you're going through, but if you get that pop-up reminder on your phone that, hey, there's a certain flag raising on this day. Oh, you know what? I'm just finished dropping off the kids, and you know what? I'm going to swing by. But sometimes, if it's not in a reminder in the calendar, like you don't really. Sometimes, again, it would just be more helpful for, if possible, if we can, right? Sorry, Madam Mayor, go ahead.
Well, since we're on this topic, the other thing that happens is we used to get invitations to things that came regularly, and now they go into the council, council package that's either comes via email and you can click on it and read them there, or click on, and read it on eScribe. But I'm wondering if that is less helpful than when you used to get all those emails inviting everybody to those things. So perhaps that's something to think about that we can
Yeah.
decide for January.
I think so in January
Whether
starting.
we want to have some of those things pulled back and have them sent directly when they come.
I think
than
definitely
the council
municipal
information
things like the tree lighting, the Santa Claus parade, the Christmas dinner. I'm just using these because there's events coming up, or let's say a certain flag raising that's important.
Julian's Place is
Yeah,
coming up.
But see, like I said, because we're getting so many inundated with so many emails, and where they go, you're kind of not, getting all, you see it, but then it kind of, as the weeks go on, if we can get pop-up reminders in an Outlook form, I know I've opened up something.
No, nothing to open up, but I think this is what the mayor said. I think maybe in the new year we really should sit down and have a conversation with that
What's
looks like, because there's some things that we probably we get, like, I get invites to like a Chamber of Commerce somewhere north of Ontario. That's not. I need a reminder. I'm not going to go. We just get inundated with random emails from all over the place.
Yeah, and I agree
So
with
I
that. That's
think
not
we
what
need-
I'm.
And I know that's not what you're saying. I just think instead of just opening us abroad, because we have that CIP folder that comes in the information package that we can go through. If there's some stuff that's localized that staff is screening first before they put it into the CIP folder.
Like I'm looking towards
Then,
more
yeah.
like budget open houses this night, public works open house,
Yes,
fire
something
station
more
one, like those kind of
local.
local municipal things. What I'm hoping we can get into our calendar. Yeah, that's my request. I don't know what the will of council is, but if we could possibly get into an Outlook Outlook calendar, Mr. CAO, that's what I'm looking for.
Okay, so we'll work on that.
If we can,
Yeah.
working for it, moving forward. Okay. Anything else, members of the committee? I just want to say this is my last meeting as chair. I've done it for I don't know how many years now, quite a bit. But I'd like to just say thanks, council and staff. We've had some, and people in Councilor Chichuk who's out there. We've had some good discussions around administration. Administration was always the meat and potatoes of all our meetings. So we did a real good job all these years. So thank you, staff. I was doing my chairing meetings pretty easy with the members I got around me. So I want to say thanks to that. Any new business, members of the committee? None? No confidential matters we have, so I guess I'll adjourn this portion of tonight's meeting at 7:54. Thank you. We'll have a little bit of a break and then we'll come back for Public Works. Thanks, Drew.
Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the Township of West Lincoln Public Works and Recreation Committee agenda for Monday, November the 18th. I'm your chair tonight, Mike Rayner, and the comments can be made from the public for the matter that is on the agenda by advising the chair during the request to address an item on the agenda section of the agenda. The public may submit written comments for matters that are on the agenda to jpaylove@westlincoln.ca before 4:30 p.m. on the day of the meeting for consideration by the committee. Comments received after 4:30 p.m. on the day of the committee meeting will be considered at the following council meeting. Comments submitted are included in the record. This meeting will be live streamed as well as recorded and available on the township's website. Land acknowledgement statement. The Township of West Lincoln, being part of the Niagara region, is situated on treaty land. This land is steeped in the rich history of the First Nations, such as the Hattawandurunk, the Haudenosaunee, and the Anishinaabe, including the Mississaugas of the Credit First Nation. There are many First Nations, Métis and Inuit from across Turtle Island that live and work in Niagara today. The Township of West Lincoln, as part of the Region Municipality of Niagara, stands with all Indigenous people, past and present, in promoting the wide stewardship of the lands on which we live. Members of committee, is there any change in order of items on the agenda? The other thing I should mention is Councillor Chichuk, you are on Zoom. Can you hear us right now? What did she say?
I'm sorry, Councilor Rayner, I didn't hear what you said.
Oh, I just wanted to make sure you're still live stream, you're still with us.
I am happy to say that I am sitting here watching all of you, yes.
Thank you. Okay, next one is disclosure, pecuniary interest, and/or conflict of interest. Any members of the committee wish to declare at this time? Seeing none, there are no appointments tonight. And request to adjust items on the agenda. There are no members in the public gallery that wish to speak at this time. Kevin, what's the word from cyberspace?
Not seeing any, Mr. Chair.
Nothing from cyberspace. Okay, thank you very much. Then we'll move on to consent agenda items, item PW 40-24, and there are none of them. And communications, there are none of them also. So we'll move on to staff reports. Item PW 41-24. Coordinator of Engineering Services, Jennifer Bernard, and Director of Public Works and Recreation, Mike DePaula. Recommendation report PW 28-2024, 2024 Memorandum of Understanding for Engineering Functions and Review in Niagara. Recommendation 1, the recommendation report PW-28-2024, titled 2024 Memorandum of Understanding for Engineering Functions and Review in Niagara, dated November 18, 2024, be received. And that council endorse the 2024 Memorandum of Understanding attached to Schedule A, and that the administration be directed to sign the 2024 Memorandum of Understanding attached as Scheduled A. I need a mover and a seconder, please. Councillor Riley and Councillor Broderick, any questions from members of committee regarding this item? Seeing none, we can go to the vote, clerk.
Just a second.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, I couldn't get my hand up.
Oh, I see it up there now, actually. There is a hand up there, isn't there? Yeah. Yes, Councillor Chichuk, you wish to speak?
Yes, Mr. Chair, a question to Mr. DePaula or whoever is the appropriate staff person through you is the function that the region is performing, is that of establishing or assisting in the establishment of engineering standards that we will adhere to or make the development industry adhere to, or exactly what does, how exactly does it read for myself and for people in the cyberspace arena?
Mr. Director, can you answer that, please?
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Chichuk. The purpose of this MOU is for review of development applications, and it basically lays out roles and responsibilities for engineering review comments. So in a two-tier municipality like Niagara Region, you have the regional government and local government, and you have regional roads, regional water infrastructure, local water infrastructure, and so on. So this memorandum of understanding is basically, it just lays out the roles and responsibilities of which municipality will comment on what, on their respective responsibility of their infrastructure. So it just lays out roles and responsibilities. I hope that answers your question.
If I could just for clarity, Mr. Chair, and thank you for that answer, Mr. DiPaolo. There's two sides of engineering. One is the establishment of engineering standards so that municipalities have established them regardless of whether they're regional, shared, or local. But then there's the development engineering, which we've just seen in a organizational chart, that's the people who are very close to the development industry, et cetera, and they look at their plans and determine that their plan is appropriately drawn and meets the standards of the community in which the services will be installed. So that's all I wanted to know is what would the difference between the two be?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Chichuk, I forgot to answer that part. The engineering standards are basically covered in our engineering and development standards. The purpose of this MOU is just roles and responsibilities to comment on the applications. So we do develop our own standards. Each municipality, the standards on municipal infrastructure could be slightly different than standards on regional infrastructure.
Thank you, Mr. DiPaolo, and thank you, Mr. Chair. Yes, I just wanted to make sure that what we were showing, what we're seeing and showing was that development standards are going to be done by the local municipality, and they are different than the implementation of building roads or infrastructure by developers must adhere, regardless of our reviews, they must adhere to our standards when they're putting in their underground work. And so there's no degradation to what we expect from people who are putting in water, sewer, or other services than we have right now, right? Through you, Mr. Chair, to Mr. DiPaolo.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Chichuk, that's correct.
Thank you very much.
Any further questions, Councillor Chichuk?
No, thank you.
Okay, Madam Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I have not ever read such a detailed document, so I have nothing to compare it with in terms of timeline. So I don't know, and perhaps either our CAO or perhaps our director might know through you, Mr. Chair, if they have, because of the circumstances now and the rest of the planning changes from the government, whether they have shortened the timelines for comments coming back. So I don't know, Mr. Chair, who has the best answer?
Yeah, through the chair to Mayor Ganan. Yeah, the timelines that have been shortened, they apply to this as well. We have to respond to engineering comments within that particular timeline as well.
So I was hopeful that they were shorter timeframes because we've been blamed often for holding things up. So I was glad to see that the region has to respond within a set period of time as well. So, okay, thank you for that.
Thank you. Any further questions from the members? Okay, sir, it's time to vote. Okay, thank you for that. Item number PW 42-24, Manager of Operations Trey Benish and Director of Public Works and Recreation Mike DiPaolo. Recommendation report PW-27-2024, designate Canada fleabane, Kanza candensis, as a local noxious weed. Recommendation, the recommendation report PW 27-2024, designate Canada fleabane, Kanza candensis, as a local noxious weed, dated November the 18th, 2024, be received, and that the administration be directed to conduct public engagement in regards to designating fleabane as a noxious weed in West Lincoln, and that administration be directed to bring a recommendation report back to committee once public engagement has concluded. Need a mover and a seconder, Councillor Trombetta and Councillor Riley. Councillor Trombetta, you have a question.
I do, thank you, Councillor Rayner. It's good to see this came to I guess, through Public Works. I had a question through you, Mr. Chair, to the Director. Public engagement has included, now, when you say that's mostly our agricultural farmers is what we're engaging with, Mr. Director, through you, Mr. Chair? And how are you going about reaching out to, because we're so vast, or, I don't know who can answer that one.
Mr. CAO.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and through you to Councillor Trombetta. Whenever you're introducing a new regulatory bylaw, it's a good idea to check in with those who are being regulated, especially if there's fines or requirements being imposed. So this would be a narrow, pretty targeted online engagement. We're not proposing anything more robust, but we would do what we can, potentially through the Chamber of Commerce as well with their membership. Get out there, just say, this is what we're doing. Do you have any comments? We'd leave it open for 2 to 3 weeks. We'd close it at the end, and any comments that we received, we would compile, put some analysis to it, and bring back to council in the new year.
Okay. And any timeframes? I know this is just for recommendations coming back. Any time, this is going to happen after Christmas, I'm imagining, the engagement, which I'd prefer to see it after Christmas, because people are getting busier this time of year.
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Trombetta, yeah, we'll undertake that public consultation that CEO talked about in the new year, and then once we wrap up the results, we'll bring a report forward
And
with some
Mr. Chair,
recommendations.
to Director, with the results, will be coming back to this committee. Okay, thank you for that update. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Riley?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just brief comment there. I just want to thank staff for being so quick. Like, this was like last month, I believe, if I'm not mistaken there. Councilor Trevetta had brought this forward, so I certainly appreciate the quickness and proactiveness, and look forward to seeing that report in the new year.
Okay, thank you. Any further questions? Seeing none, it's time for the vote. Okay, thank you for that. Item PW 43-24, Manager of Operations Trey Benish and Director of Public Works and Engineering Mike DePaula. Recommendation Report PW 26-2024, Supply and Delivery of Fuel Products Tender Authorization. Recommendation 1, that Recommendation Report PW-26-2024 titled Supply and Delivery of Fuel Products Tender Authorization dated November 18, 2024 be received, and that Council accepts the tender submission from Canada Clean Fuels, Inc. for a 3-year term ending September 2027. Need a mover and a seconder for this, please? Okay, Councillor, I've got one, Councillor Bradrick and Madam Mayor. Any questions from members of committee regarding this? Seeing none, time for the vote. Thank you. And that carries. Other business, member of council, anybody have anything with regards to an informative nature? Seeing none, new business, any new business being brought forward at this time? Thank you. Confidential matters, there are none at this time. And this will be my last time as Chair of Public Works. As Councillor Trombetta mentioned, our session time is up, and they'll be moving around, and other people will be taking this position. So I wish them all the best. This meeting will be adjourned at 8:11. Thank you.